So I thought we'd just revisit the little demos I've been doing on oil washes, and so in this part, we'll call this part 2. We were looking at the cockpit before, and now it's probably the main use of oils, I would think, and doing a panel line wash. So what I've got here is a large canvas. This is a 1/32 Stuka from Trumpeter, and it's got a camouflage pattern on it where you've got quite a few different colours, as you can see. So therefore I find it's quite useful to use a colour that's going to either work on all of them or use different colours, if that makes sense. So for instance, if you had a black, the black's going to be too much on the white, probably pretty good on the brown, pretty good on the green, probably again too much on the grey. So then moving around, I think if we went for something like raw umber, which is very good for camouflage, that's going to work across all. It's not going to be too much on the brown, and likewise it's not going to show up very well in this brown, so it might be that we mix a bit of black with it just in the small areas that are brown, but I think for overall it would be better to start with this. So that's what I'm going to use. Down here I've got my little palette, as it were, where I've been doing this. I've had another small plane on the go, a Polycarpov here, which has got some red and greens on it, so I've mixed up a few different colours here. I was doing this last night. These oils have actually now dried out a little bit, but they're perfectly usable, so I'm continuing to use them, and that's no problem. It might mean that they just dry off a bit quicker. So I've made my quite watery mix here using low odourless thinners to thin down the oil paint, and now I like to just sort of tap. This is over a gloss coat, this must be said. You can do this over a matte coat and you get different effects. So the benefits of being on a gloss coat, you get quite a lot of travel. So if you watch this, you should see that it moves all the way down the panel line through capillary action, whereas when it's matte, it doesn't move quite as fast. So I mean, it's actually more controllable. In fact, I prefer to do most of my weathering on a matte coat, but I do like to do the panel lines on a gloss coat, and then get all of that sorted, and then usually matte it down and then come in with using oils neat or thinned over the top of a matte coat. So again, using this colour here where it's a bit lighter, it should be a bit more of a contrast and show up a bit better on camera. So all I'm really doing is just dabbing in the corners and letting the mix run around so it finds where it wants to go. Some of these panel lines aren't actually that well pronounced, so I need to kind of push it in there, for want of a better word, where these are two gun panels here, where I've tried to sand them flush, so I've lost the panel lines a little bit. But all of these oval ones, they should be fine. And again, where those lines are a bit more faint, it's better to put quite a bit on there, let it dry, and then just wipe it off very, very lightly, and it will stay in there. Whereas when you've got quite deep panel lines, it's not a problem to do it in a normal fashion. So what I used to do was, I used to be a bit impatient, and while it was still damp like this, I used to wick it off with cotton buds and kitchen roll and stuff, and that pulls it out of the panel line. So I mean, what I've done here, you probably can't see over there, but I was doing this last night and I've let that dry. And again, when you're on a gloss coat or when you're with oils, this is the best thing. Until you seal them in, you can always move them just by hitting them with some thinner or even just some kitchen towel. You can always manipulate them, usually wipe them off back to where you started to if you really had to. So it's a very benign sort of thing to use, so it's quite good. It doesn't have any sort of lasting effects until you seal it in, so that's why oils are liked so much, because they're quite forgiving. So I basically then just go across the panels like this, the panel lines, and make sure I fill them all, and then leave this. Probably I'm going to leave this for most of the day now. I'll be off to work, this is the morning, and then sort of 8-10 hours later, this should be dry enough for me just to wipe over with a kitchen towel, I'll just be using a bit of that, and that will wipe off the excess, and you'll find most of it will dry off actually, and dry back. Sometimes you can get staining if you're doing this over a matte coat. Don't worry, that generally goes away as soon as the odourless thinners vent off. The staining goes, and then you can just rub it back. And if you really need to, you can get a satin coat sometimes, so if you really need to, you can then hit it with another matte coat to seal it in if you want a dead flat finish. And so this is panel lines, really. I'm going to leave this as quite a short video, but the concept of this is not to be worried. Now, this isn't even on a gloss coat. This is MRP lacquer paints, and I'm going straight onto these with oils. There's no cross-contamination, they don't affect each other. There is no way you can affect the lacquer paint with these oils, with the oil thinners or anything like that. Now, if you was using terps, if you're using white spirit, something like that, well, that's a whole different kettle of fish, and I wouldn't advise that. I'd advise using a very low odour and not a very potent oil thinner, and you'll have no problem. Now, if you're doing this over acrylic, I mean, the same really applies, but I would advise putting down a barrier coat of something. So whether you've got a lacquer gloss coat, or even an acrylic gloss coat, I mean, a lot of people do it over Future and stuff like that, or any similar product, then I would advise that, really. Or similarly, if you're going to do it over a matte, then do a matte coat. Now, you might see here I'm just getting a bit liberal with my application, and that's because I really want to pack it into these panel lines, and I'm noticing that some of it isn't showing up, especially in the rivets. So rivets can be a little bit of a problem, because here I've put some back in, and I've obviously not put them in as thick as they were when the kit was manufactured. So just a few things like that. You can see it as it's coming on, and you just want to sort of be sure that you're happy, that you've got plenty of coverage, because don't worry about the excess. As you can see here on these panels, a lot of that will fade away as the thinner vents off, and then after that I can just wipe it and it'll be gone, and it'll just leave it in the recessed parts. Now, again, another important thing to say, I would think, is don't be scared of mixing the colours. You know, I've got a whole pot of acrylic of oils here, all different colours, all different shapes and sizes, and I just mix them together to get the right colours. It just so happened that straight out of the pot, Raw Umber is a bit of a classic one for modelling, and it's a very good neutral colour for most camouflages. But here I was mixing up a sort of orangey brown for the reds over there, and I used a bit of this sort of fluorescent purple here as well. So, I mean, you never know. Just try it, and if you don't like it, wipe it off and go again. So I'm not sure how much you'll be able to learn from this short video, but again, I suppose it's just showing you the application and the effect and how I do it, which I worry that I see a lot of stuff on Facebook and that where people are modelling, and I get the feeling people are a little bit worried about things like oils and that sort of thing. And I mean, there really is no reason to. I mean, if you start using sort of AK washes and things like that, they're enamel based. Well, that is a little bit different. Again, they're very similar to oils, but they do have a bit more staying power, I suppose. They can stick on a little bit more, so you want to sort of watch that. But if you're just using straight oils, I've never really had a problem. The only time I have had a problem is, as I've mentioned before, is using the water-based oil paints. They don't tend to come off as well, so I'd stay clear of those. But if you're using true oils, it really should be giving you a great effect. So I would go ahead and try them. I'm even going over the canopy sections here that are masked. It's not a problem, because if it bleeds under, which it rarely does, but obviously because it's very liquidy, it can bleed under the masking tape here, it just wipes off again. It's just like an oily residue on the canopy, and it wipes off and it's crystal clear. And we've got lots of rivet detail all the way around here, so I want that to pop. So it's essential to get these oils in here and do all of this. And so hopefully you enjoyed that, and I'll try and do the next step as well. on this model, showing sort of dust effects of oils and what the finished result will be. So we've got the cockpit in the Corsair, and then we'll probably finish off the surfaces on this, and I think that would be the simple uses for oils, and then we can perhaps look at it a bit deeper as we go on with future builds. So I hope you enjoyed that, and if you haven't seen the one before, I'll have it linked to this video, or I'll have it coming up at the end of the video, so do have a look at that, where I do a bit of oil work in the cockpit, and I'll see you in the next video.